30, and we have a quorum. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Urban Design Commission on November 17th. Kevin, if you could please note the attendance. Before we get into our posted agenda, though, I would like to give Stefan an opportunity to speak about the rules and regulations for a virtual meeting.
Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add pronouns after their names if they choose. Please do not alter the current naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on commission members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Stefan, can I get a motion for approval of minutes from the last meeting? Raise a hand. Okay, that is a motion by Russell, seconded by Christian. Seeing no objections, minutes are approved from October 27th. Brings us to agenda item number 1, general comment. I did not see any registrations for general comment, so we can move on to disclosures and recusals. Does anybody have anything they want to get off their chest? Are you raising your hand, Christian?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back to the minutes there. I tried to do it before we voted on it, but there was actually a mistake in there that I think should, in the interest of accuracy, be rectified. And that was on the vote that we did on the West High School project. And in the minutes, the part where it talks about the voting process that went on there, particularly with Tom's vote, has it wrong. It's correct in the report, but it's wrong in the minutes. So that should be corrected to accurately reflect what happened.
Okay, I know that he voted in the first motion to break a tie. And a motion failed. So we'll go back and make sure that both the notes and the minutes are consistent with each other. Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Any disclosures or recusals? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
I just wanted to follow up with Christian's comments because I want to make sure we correct it. Is there a specific part of the motion that was incorrect or inconsistent? We'll certainly look at it as the chair directed, but I just wanted to know if you had a specific line or note that you believe to be inaccurate.
Well, as I said, if you go back and reread it, you'll see in the report it talks about the vote and that it was 3-3, and then, Tom voted, but in the minutes, it made it that Tom voted in the first part of it, making it 4-3, and then goes on to act like it was a tie, which if it was 4-3, it's not a tie. So like I say, it's absolutely correct in the report as written, but it's not that it didn't get transcribed like that into the minutes. If you look at it, it'll be perfectly obvious as soon as you take one look at it.
Okay, but the roll call is accurate, and we can just clarify the vote, and when what the original vote was and then what the final vote was after Tom registered his vote. And then everything should be good. Thank you. Okay, so there's no disclosures and or recusals. That brings us then to our agenda overview.
Thank you, Chair. Just go over this afternoon's agenda. You'll note that the first item on the agenda is a public hearing, and this is for comprehensive design review of signage. There is a report from the zoning staff on this one, and staff does recommend approval and does believe that this could be considered on the consent agenda if the body chose. Then moving on, we have two plan updates. The first item is the South Madison plan. You'll recall at the last meeting, there was an informational presentation. Tonight, this one is back before the Urban Design Commission for a formal recommendation. Again, the Urban Design Commission is an advisory body, and it's been formally referred to this body for a formal recommendation. Following that is an informational presentation on the East Town planning effort. And so staff will give an overview and we can have a discussion on that. That's item 4. Then moving into the development items, item number 5 is 1954 East Washington. This is East Washington, 2nd Street, Mifflin Street, planned a residential building complex. This is before the commission for initial final, and the commission is advisory to the plan commission on this item. Then moving to number 6, we have an informational presentation at 7820 through 7874 Mineral Point Road. These are changes to a shopping center, and these modifications are before you for an informational presentation tonight. That is what I have for the overview.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Kevin mentioned that item number 2 is a possible consent item. If there's a nomination for this and any other items for consent agenda approval, I'd take a motion. Okay. Lois?
I'll suggest make a motion for number 2 to be a consent item.
Okay. Seconded by Tom. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Let me just lower the hands here and see if anybody raises their hands with questions or objections. Seeing none, item number 2 then is approved. Thank you very much. And that moves us now to item number 3. So we did hear from you last time, Jeff. Is there any additional information you want to present us before we hear our other registrants or questions or comments from the commission?
No, not really. The presentation is essentially the same. Mm-hmm. Happy to answer questions that you may have.
Okay. Before we open it up to the commission for questions, I believe there is one registrant wishing to speak on that item, and that is Helen Kitchell, registered neither in support nor opposition, but wishing to speak.
Helen, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself. Looks like you were unmuted on our end. There you go. You're unmuted. If you are on a device and have a microphone that has some type of on-off button, that might be something to look at.
We're not hearing you, Helen, but we're going to try to work through it so you can have your say. We're not going to give up on you just yet.
Okay, I'll reach out to her. with the contact information that we have.
Okay, while Stefan tries to establish contact with Helen Kitchell, is there any questions or comments from the commission? Kevin, go ahead, Tom. I was just going to say, we're being asked for an advisory recommendation, and since it's been referred to the Urban Design Commission, I presume that gives us the ability to comment on any and all parts of the plan, not just the narrow request to amend the urban design district. Is that correct?
That's correct. The commission can add that. I would ask that if there are comments that they be adopted as part of a motion of the body. And so more like a formal recommendation as opposed to an informational presentation. But yes, you could comment on any item that you'd like in the plan.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead, Tom, and then Christian.
Thank you, Cliff. Just since we have lots of planning staff here, and I don't know if Tim and Bill were also involved with South Madison Plan, but one of the comments, I would say allegations made in the letter submitted by certain neighbors is about process and referencing, and I understand correctly that county plans like the destination district plan, the county just has a different process. They do not adopt plans and then incorporate them into the grand comprehensive plan the way the city does. But maybe if you just want to address, give us your view of how those recommendations on height were incorporated process-wise. Again, also acknowledging that the South Madison plan area-wise only affected the area below Wingwood or south of Wingwood Creek. So the Bay Creek neighborhood, which is basically the neighborhood behind this petition, they essentially were not involved formally in the planning process. And I think that's something the whole commission has to understand when looking at those comments, is that this site that is contentious to our neighborhood is actually not in our neighborhood, is not part of the South Madison plan, and is about a quarter mile away from any actual single family residence in the Bay Creek neighborhood. But again, if Jeff or Tim or Bill want to talk about how the height recommendations got incorporated.
Sure. So as part of our planning effort, we felt it was important to include a height map to help guide development in South Madison. It was something that the previous plan did not have. As part of our normal planning process, we developed a height map. We held public meetings for review of that height map as part of this process. Residents were able to weigh in whether or not they felt the heights were appropriate. To address the Bay Creek issue, we have made efforts to include them in this planning effort somewhat. Granted, they are not in our study area. However, we know that our public meeting notices went out to the neighborhood association mailing list. Staff attended a neighborhood meeting this summer to update those residents on the South Madison plan. At that meeting, we made everyone aware that the best way to follow our planning process is sign up for our email list. I know a number of Bay Creek residents have also attended many of our meetings. So those folks who are interested have participated in the South Madison planning effort. But like you said, Tom, this area is not in the Bay Creek neighborhood. Just want to clarify, if you were talking about the Olin Triangle, that is included in the South Madison planning boundary. The only area excluded was the Alliant Energy Center campus property. And that was the decision made by policymakers back in 2019 when the plan was authorized to proceed. Tim, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
I would just add to Jeff's excellent overview that we felt that it was two things with the Olin Triangle in particular. The land use change from employment to regional mixed use We felt that broadening the mix of potential uses of that site would be beneficial, especially since the employment recommendation may be a little out of date. And we've already seen one project looking to do something in addition to employment on that site. The redevelopment of the Wonder Bar and Coliseum property had an employment component, but I think it's fair to say that it was predominantly a residential project. And so we use that as an opportunity to take a look at whether we should broaden that land use. And then we did, kind of following on some work that was done in conjunction with the Alliant Energy Center master plan, the destination district vision strategy, kind of using one of the recommendations that came about through that process to put a height recommendation on the Olin Triangle, kind of following that recommendation because we generally agreed with it. We also felt that there was an opportunity along the east side of John Nolan Drive to establish a height limitation. There has not previously been one there. Obviously, we have everything from 1 story up to 8 stories. The Sheraton is an 8-story building. Most of the buildings through there are 3, 4, 5-story buildings. Pertzborn's got a 1-story building. M3's got a 2-story building. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we thought that there was an opportunity to establish a height map there so that we'd have a little more consistency and a little more predictability in that area so that we didn't have individual projects being judged whether they were too tall or not. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Christian.
Yeah, there was a late arriving message from somebody in the community referencing the area and the Thorstad property being designated for owner-occupied single-family homes. And the concern was that it seemed to be ruling out owner-occupied other types of buildings, such as condominiums or presumably co-ops. And I thought that was a point well taken. It seems like we're always dealing with either apartments or single family homes, and not so much with the in between type of developments that will give us greater density, but are also owner occupied. And I wondered if there was anything in this plan that would preclude those possible types of developments in that area at this point, or if it would still be flexible enough that might be a consideration.
So we are actually showing a mix of uses in the Thorstad area. Hopefully you can see the slide that I've got up. So we're showing mixed use buildings, apartment buildings, 5-story along Park Street. We are showing single family residential lots. They're shown at 4,000 square feet. We could go down to 3,000 square feet and squeeze in some additional lots there. These buildings up here are cottage type homes. So they're 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. And those would likely be in some sort of condo arrangement where you own the building, but the land is owned by a condo. And we're also showing some traditional townhomes, row homes, up in this corner. As with all of our plans, this is kind of the 10,000-foot view. This will need additional planning in the future. Our plans are somewhat flexible. The mixes could change, from, the amount of cottage homes could increase and the amount of single family lots could decrease, or any combination thereof. I just want to point out for this section of the Thorstad concept, so these mixed use, the single family lots, the cottage homes, and the row homes is averaging at 16 dwelling units per acre. Just the residential lots at 4,000 square feet are averaging at just under 10 DU per acre. Our citywide average for single family lots is around 4.5 dwelling units per acre. If you went to 3,000 square foot lots, the density would increase above what it is now. So I guess I would say we are showing some flexibility as far as the type of unit, whether it's owner occupied or it's a condo. Our housing chapter has a recommendation that perhaps this gets developed as a community land trust. So we do have some options. And like I said, this is that 10,000 foot view. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out. But it was something that we heard loud and clear from the community. We offered the whole smorgasbord of options of different housing types, everything from apartments to single family and everything in between. And the community came back and said, we need single family residential detached lots in South Madison. Just looking at, these are the comments, but looking at the numbers right now in South Madison, it's just under 21% owner occupied, just under 80% renter, whereas the city of Madison is skewing closer to almost 50-50. And then the types of homes or types of dwelling units in South Madison, 29% is single family to 67.5% multifamily, where again, city of Madison is closer to 52-47. It's also an equity consideration. South Madison has been redlined and discriminated against, throughout history. And then to tell them, no, you only get apartments, that doesn't seem very equitable type decision. So that's kind of that. Those are the thoughts behind, this recommendation. We fully recognize it is not our normal recommendation for a transit line, an area so close to downtown. It's not where we started. We had concepts showing, the whole Thorstad area up here in multifamily residential. And when we showed those to the community, we got very strong pushback. So we're attempting to incorporate community feedback. We've looked at how this could be done. It's going to take a lot of city resources to do it, but we feel it's an important recommendation. It's definitely an important discussion to have through this approval process.
Okay, thank you. And it is a concept. It's not a plat map, and
Correct.
Certainly there, but the predominant, I guess, message that we should be looking at is it's relatively low density housing in this Thorstad area. Say, as opposed to what the subject we were just talking about along John Nolan, which is very high density. Stefan, any luck making contact with Helen Kitchell?
I haven't been able to. We can try to unmute her again. I've emailed her 3 times using the email that she provided for registration. So Helen, I'm going to attempt to unmute you again. You can try *6 if you're on a phone. I see that you have your hand raised. You should have a prompt to unmute yourself. I also sent them the call-in information on the agenda.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
any other questions while we're still trying to make that connection? Tom?
Yeah, and thanks again. Just a quick comment. Was really pleased to hear, and I missed it in reading the plan, about the recommendation of community land trust. That concept would allow people to build equity without necessarily everyone having to own their own individual home. It's really like a real estate investment trust where you own shares, but it would be, Chris, it would provide for flexibility in building types. So you could be partial owner of a larger multifamily development and build equity without having to own a single individual unit. So that's very progressive. I'm really glad to hear it. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm sorry that we're not able to make connection with our registrant. There was also, as we all received a letter from 2 or 3 people was citing some of their concerns that I think Tom alluded to.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but it looks like Helen might be joining us via phone here. Helen, I see you popped up. You should have a prompt to unmute yourself. *6. Yeah, I don't have any other. Oh, there we go, Helen.
I know. Think so. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry for the, I don't know why this has happened to me before with city meetings, and it's the only time that my microphone doesn't work. So I ended up calling in. I should just call in from now on. Anyway, my concern with regard to the South Madison plan was the height map and the height limitations. And I guess basically the concern arises from having the potential for 12-story buildings along Olin Turville Conservation Park and Olin Park and Turville Point Conservation Parks. And I think it's not a matter, I understand entirely the need for housing, and I understand, very much that needs to happen. But I think that my biggest concern is that location is what is critical, and that building those tall buildings adjacent to that park, which is considered a natural gem on the landscape, and the people go there to actually get away from downtown and get away from all the tall buildings, that will impact the quality of that park, as well as we've raised the issue of bird strikes as well. And since the city at this point can't enforce their bird strike ordinance, that's not kind of an option to minimize that as well. And so I think that's what my greatest concern is, and that's what some of the other neighbors have been concerned about, is the quality of allowing 12-story buildings adjacent to that. And it's a function of looking at where you're putting these tall buildings, and that might there be better locations for those buildings, either infill downtown or at other locations that are not immediately adjacent to a conservation park, which was developed to intentionally as an area of location and as an area for use for people to get out into a park in the public realm. So that's what my biggest concern was, and I just wanted to express that. And I know that height is one of the considerations for urban design districts, that very often there's attempts are made to try and not blend, but I mean that the heights taken into consideration considering the surrounding area. And that area east of John Nolan Drive, adjacent to the park, the Sheridan is an 8-story building, and is visible from the park. And so the concern is that if you then increase that by 50%, you'd have a big obstructed view all around the park. So that's what I just wanted to express to you. I understand the need for housing. I don't know that this would necessarily develop by housing, but that there would be concern about that, and just asking for consideration of the buildings there would be less high than 12 stories high.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for Helen Kitchell? The commission, no. Okay. All right. So we've been asked to provide a advisory recommendation. It affects the urban design district, but again, it is a more South Madison wide plan. So any comments or qualifiers to a motion would be appreciated. Any motion at all would be appreciated. I can't make a motion. I'm a chair. Let's see. Stefan, is somebody trying to raise their hands? I'm not seeing it. No? Okay, Craig. There you go.
I think we're all just trying to be polite and let somebody else go first, right?
Okay.
Ray Lewis, we were just so I'll make a motion to recommend approval with the document as published. I believe Tim and others made some really good discussions about the justification for the different areas, and it is, as discussed, because it has flexibility in it. In what this document is, I think it's a very good start, and I would just recommend moving forward as is.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion? Okay. Tom, that's a second? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Tom?
I just want to clarify, I might want to add one modification to the motion, and that's only in the future, as of October, or I believe 31st of 2022, the rest of the town of Madison comes into the city. And at that time, the land under the Alliant Energy Center becomes part of the city of Madison. I'd like to see the plan more or less immediately updated to incorporate the AEC master plan document or wherever it stands at that point, because it is somehow incomplete, including Design District 1 along John Nolan Drive. There are larger buildings that there's no height limit set in the master plan for AEC, but there will be taller buildings. I think the idea of integrating, whether John Nolan Drive is going to be a dense and tall gateway to the city or something else, requires looking at the AEC component of the plan, basically. So I would just ask the city staff to put that in there, that we approve the plan as it is now with that big donut hole in it, but then that the AEC piece be incorporated as soon as the town of Madison's incorporated in the city.
Okay. Thank you. Rafiq.
My hand was, I was trying to make the motion from the very beginning, but nobody wouldn't call me or see me.
I'm sorry. Whatever it is on your wall there.
I know, that's what I was saying the last time. You can't see my hand because of that's what it is.
It was blending in there. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. You're going to take that thing down off your wall or move your camera angle or something. I'll keep an eye out though. Thank you. Okay, so we have the motion. It's seconded with some additional comments by Tom. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, the motion is approved.
Wait.
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I don't know that that's Robert's rules. Like, I don't know that. So the motion was stated one way, and then he tried to come change the motion. So the motion maker has to then agree to that, right?
The body needs to agree. Once the motion is made, it's the body. So to amend the motion, if it was a friendly amendment, you could ask if there's no dissent, it could be added as a friendly amendment. If somebody wants to discuss the motion, just have to note that, and then the body would have to vote on whether that would become part of the main motion. So I would advise that first the commission asks if it's a friendly amendment, and if there's objections or further discussion, then we can vote on whether or not that becomes part of the main motion.
Okay, so it's basically two votes. Shall we make this part of the main motion? And seeing no hands raised, then by unanimous consent, it is part of the main motion. And so now that we have an amended motion, we will vote to approve the amended motion. And if I see no hands raised in objection, then by unanimous consent, the amended motion passes. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us then to agenda item number 4, another plan. This one is the Easttown area.
Hello, Bill Fruling. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a principal planner in the city's planning division, Kevin's counterpart in a different section, but probably for about the first 15 years or so that I had this job, staffing of the Urban Design Commission was in my section. And I even was interim staff to the commission a number of years ago when we were in between UDC secretaries, kind of like Kevin's doing now. So it's good to be here again. I used to come to all of your meetings. It's been a while. So I'm here today just to give you a quick update on the Greater Easttown area plan that we've been working on. And if it's okay for me to share my screen, I have a number of slides I'd just like to roll through here. So this is the area, the planning boundary. You can see the mall kind of right in the middle there, but the boundaries are generally Mendota Street on the west, both sides of East Washington Avenue on what I'm calling the north. It's a little more northwest. It goes to the interstate and then down through Starkweather Creek. It's a large area. It's about a little over 785 acres in total, including the area of the creek there. So if you overlaid that on the isthmus, you can see how much development potential there truly is. Not that we expect or are planning on this level and density of development, but it really gives some context as to the scale of what we're talking about here. So it really is a large area with a lot of opportunity. I even had to have this map checked because after I saw this, it's like, wait, the scales have to be off here. It can't be that big, but but it is. It's really quite a large area. So this is the future land use map from the comprehensive plan, and you can see that the main takeaways from this, I think, are the purple, which is regional mixed use, which is kind of the mall and a lot of those surrounding uses. The area in red is general commercial, and that's like where a lot of the big box type stores that are surrounding the mall are located. And one of the recommendations of the comprehensive plan was to prepare plans for both the Westtown area and the Easttown area for them to transition into something other than the auto-oriented commercial areas that they are today, and really try to tap into that potential and provide a framework for their evolution to their whatever comes next. We started out with kind of 5 guiding principles. We wanted to create a place, or actually a collection of places. We wanted to focus on mobility, not just to be able to get through the site and to destinations within the site, by walking, car, bike, transit, but also to connect it and weave in the pattern of the neighborhood into its surrounding context. We wanted to make this a place for everybody. So community wealth building is kind of one of those core principles that as this area evolves, we want to make sure that particularly BIPOC communities, the people that maybe have fewer financial resources, that they are accommodated and they're a part of the evolution of this from the ground up. A lot of times we go back in to some of the older existing neighborhoods that maybe maybe some of their residents are struggling in different ways, and really focus on how we can raise them up and how we can provide greater opportunities. And one of the things that we want to really center as this area evolves is thinking of that at the forefront. We want to center nature and sustainability. So for as much as the East Town and West Town areas are very much the same, East Town has this great asset in the Starkweather Creek watershed, this great natural area that provides a lot of amenity and can provide amenity for future residents of this area. We wanted to also center resiliency, and we're talking resiliency, we're talking social, economic, and environmental. This area is going to change, and it's going to change a lot. We're not quite sure of the pace of it, but we want to be able to have a plan that is flexible to respond to changes in those different areas. For instance, I think there's still a fair amount of question about what is going to happen to the office demand in the future. And I think this plan, provides a good framework, but also provides enough flexibility that it can adapt to those changes as things evolve. I know I've said this a number of times already, but this is a really big area, and it's going to take a long time for it to build out, several decades. So here is a proposed future land use map that we have in this plan. It's you can see the gray lines, the new street patterns. The existing streets are shown in white. The solid gray lines and the dashed lines are a proposed new street pattern, and I will show a slide in a minute that will focus in on that a little bit more so you can just get a better feel for it. But really what we tried to do here is also have a more nuanced approach to future land use that will ultimately be zoning, where the core, where the mall is now, it continues to be regional mixed use. If the mall stays in operation, great. I think it would benefit everybody if the mall, was healthy and profitable. But when we look across the country, that's not necessarily the trends of enclosed malls. Some of them, we only have to look as far as Hilldale here locally, that was an enclosed mall, and how that's kind of gotten rid of a lot of the internal mall part and started facing outward. So there are a lot of things that could happen with the existing mall, but whatever that is, this plan is showing it continuing to be that regional mixed use. And then we have in the browns and in yellows, residential. We feel there's a lot of potential for residential here. In fact, we think it's really necessary to have residential. So you do have that place, you have that active area all times of the day and night. And to kind of support that more, you see the lighter, I'm losing my cursor, see the lighter purple area, the CMU or the community mixed use. You see a good chunk of it just east of Zaire Road. You see some down around Lean Road and up along East Wash and towards Mendota. And that's really more community focused mixed use. There's not a ton of difference between the regional mixed use and the community mixed use, except a lot of it, I think, is just scale. And so we're projecting that with this kind of future land use arrangement at full build out, which again is going to take several decades, but it'll be here before we know it. We think this plan can accommodate about 9,500 new dwelling units, about 16,000 people in this area, and about 27,000 new employees. Again, things are going to evolve and change, and we think this plan provides that framework for those changes to come. But with this proposed future land use mix, that's about what we're projecting it could accommodate. So here is the proposed street network. And really what we're trying to do here is not only build in connectivity to make it easier to get through the area and to places within the area, but it also breaks down those very large blocks that are there and really sets it up for more types of development. And so these streets are, there's still some pretty large blocks in some of these areas. In some areas, particularly when you get down more to like the lower density residential areas, there could be additional streets that are put in here between these blocks to break those down even further. But again, with our kind of 30,000 foot plans and trying to provide that framework, this is the level that we typically go to. And the difference on this between phase 1 and phase 2 streets is, we think that these streets are all going to be important moving forward, but those phase 1 streets could go in without having to demolish any buildings. And then the phase 2 would typically require some demolitions of some buildings. To accommodate this and to go along with the future land use map, we're proposing some pretty tall heights here, and think that there's a lot of potential for that. Particularly like along near the interstate, some bigger buildings there would be fine. You can see the low and medium density residential areas that we're proposing are more the 3 to 5 stories. But if somebody wanted to come in the area where the mall is right now and build some taller buildings, like up to 12 stories, we think that would work really well with this plan and this concept. And likewise, we're showing taller buildings closer to East Washington Avenue. As you probably heard, we're having bus rapid transit coming to Madison, and there are a number of stops adjacent to this site along East Washington Avenue. And so we want to really increase the potential for additional density close to those transit stops. So I mentioned before parks and open space. So this map shows the Starkweather Creek, natural area. It shows an extension of Mayfair Park, and to to serve the future residents of this area. We're also looking at 2 smaller neighborhood parks, about 3 to 5 acres in size, that you can see in those green hatched areas along East Springs Drive and kind of where Fire and Egan come together. So in those areas, we're looking for parks of 3 to 5 acres in size. And you can see up in the legend, there's a box that shows about how much of that area it would take up. We didn't want to nail down a specific park site in that area, but narrow the area some. One of the notable features of this, kind of right in the middle, going right through the middle of the existing mall, you can see kind of the red hatched area that is a potential urban plaza. So the area where the mall is now, we see that as really, and again, along with the 12-story building heights, we see this as like really an active destination, and not just for people that will live here, but for the larger community. And I'll show some images of that in a minute. But really kind of an urban active park. So these next series of slides are just kind of an illustration of how some of this development could be phased in over time, just to give you a little sense of us thinking about this in a realistic way over, and how some of these parking lots can fill in, how some of these underutilized buildings could be developed over time. And it's not something by any means that all has to happen at one time, or necessarily anything that has to happen in really big chunks to have this plan be implemented. So this is what you see today. So we could see starting to have some infill on some parking lots and some vacant lots, and maybe some redevelopment of sites up close to East Washington Avenue along where the BRT is going to be. Then you could start adding in a few new streets, and that will open up the potential for more of those underutilized lots. And largely not touching existing buildings that are there. There's some redevelopment of existing buildings shown here, but really trying to focus on like parking lots, surface parking lots. The next phase, like if the mall decided they wanted to redevelop some of it and say knock off that one wing of the mall, that could open up some more potential and start getting in some additional streets. And this isn't really a full build out, because you can see some of those light blue parcels with the white buildings kind of ghosted in there. Still some existing buildings, but this really focuses more on, if the mall were to go away, really the potential that would unlock. And you can see that kind of urban plaza I was talking about going down the middle there. Then I had just a few little snippets of images to try to give a little bit more sense of the kind of place that we're hoping to create here. Or again, we really look at it as a series of neighborhoods. But this would be a view, looking north, kind of at that urban plaza, and you can see those taller buildings that are kind of lining it. Just another shot of that. This is Zaire Road. Again, this is an area that has some taller buildings, but it's starting to transition towards the bottom of the screen into a little more moderate height buildings. These are some of the single family, or not single family, but the the lower density residential areas, more townhouse type developments. We're not, proposing any single family lots in this, even the really small ones, but still trying to get at, a lot of times we talk about missing middle housing, but kind of more this 3 to 5 story scale housing. And, think there's an opportunity for a wide variety of housing types, including some of these townhouses. And, I should have said at the beginning, you probably all are aware of this. We're not suggesting any architecture in any of this, but we're just trying to add a little bit more detail to get a little bit more flavor to what this might look like than just the really boxy SketchUp models. So that's all we're trying to show here. Here's again, one of those neighborhood parks that I talked about, and how different scales of buildings could relate to that. In this particular image, I think those blocks towards the top of the screen with the townhouses. I mentioned on the street patterns that, it might be desirable to punch in a couple extra streets beyond what we were showing. And this is an example where there are a couple extra streets that weren't shown on that previous street map, just to break those blocks down and provide some more opportunities for those buildings to front on streets. Again, another neighborhood park, but this one in an area that is adjacent to a little bit taller buildings. And then it gets down to this plan, Urban Design District number 5 is shown in purple here, and that's where it exists. And we have a couple recommendations for Urban Design District number 5. And I don't know how familiar you all are with this, but UDD number 5 was created in 1995. And as with probably through Urban Design District 6, like 1 through 6, they're really general in terms of what their standards are. And I know that there are plans to revisit and revise all of our urban design districts. When we have the staff to do that, and and we're able to get that scheduled. But when we do that, this plan recommends that Urban Design District number 5, be not only have its standards revisited, but suggest that this goes all the way to the interstate. I'm not sure why the lines were drawn exactly where they are here and why it was kind of cut off. I think it was because of development covenants maybe that were associated with that area east of Zaire Road. But regardless, we're recommending that the Urban Design District be extended to the interstate. And then we're also recommending that at that time, the city consider adding some additional sites south of East Washington Avenue that are key to unlocking some of this development potential or realizing the vision that's articulated in the plan. It might make sense, say, to bubble out that urban design district to pick up some of those sites. I'm not going to speculate on what those might or might not be at this point, but I think the point is that we probably need to think a little bit broader about the boundaries of Urban Design District 5 at the time that we move to update it. And along with with BRT, our zoning code has provision for transit-oriented development overlay districts. and that's another tool that we have in our bag that can promote additional density and development. It can address a number of types of issues that would be consistent with this plan. And depending on how the Urban Design District 5 discussion goes, implementing TOD overlay zoning in areas around the transit stops along East Washington Avenue might be another tool that could help us achieve this plan. So there are some very generic design recommendations in an appendix of this plan. So these are just the same ones as the ones that were proposed in the Odana Road plan. So really these are like urban design 101 textbook kind of level recommendations, but we thought that they were important to include in the plan. So those remain at the forefront of everybody's thinking as we move to implement the recommendations of this plan and as development projects are reviewed. So they're kind of in the three categories of building heights, setbacks, and step backs. There's a section about building materials and articulation, and then a section related to site layouts and building orientation. So we are having the draft of the plan was published on Monday. We had a public meeting on Monday. There's another one going on in about an hour from now. After those meetings, staff will take those comments, and we still have some refinements to do to the plan. And then on January 4th, it will be introduced at the Common Council and referred to different boards, commissions, and committees. And we are anticipating a February of 2022 adoption for the plan. So with that, I will stop sharing. Try to stop sharing. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any comments you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. One question I have is following adoption, I guess what are the steps to actually incorporate this plan into the zoning code?
Great question. I didn't include that slide, but as you may or may not know, with some of our more recent plans, we've been asked to proactively rezone property, and so we have a proposed map in the plan that would show what recommended zoning changes would be to implement this plan. And so when the plan's adopted, that's just kind of information at that point. And so the next step, and we're going through this with the Oscar Mayer area right now, where there was zoning that was proposed, but now we're going through the steps. We have to go through the legal descriptions and have some more public meetings and actually move those ordinances through the adoption process. And kind of corollary to that, we are also proposing, and this is a tool that we use very sparingly, but officially mapping some street segments in this area. And that kind of relates to the proactive rezoning as well. But what officially mapping a street does, it kind of reserves it. And so it prohibits any building permits from being issued for anything in those streets. So I think in this plan, we only have about 3 short segments of streets that are going to be critical for other things to happen as this moves forward.
In the areas where you showed heights, I presume those are maximum heights. Would you be suggesting minimum heights?
I don't know why I just muted myself there. Sorry. One of the things in the guidelines is there's a minimum of 2 stories kind of across the board. There's one thing regarding height that I should mention that might be of interest to the Urban Design Commission. There's a recommendation in the comprehensive plan that there be a view shed study done to preserve key views of the Capitol, of the skyline, and of the lakes. And so we took a look at that. So really the areas, because this is kind of down in a hole, the mall's in a low area, there's more of a ridge along the interstate there. If you think like of where, if you're familiar with the area, like where Home Depot sits up there. But so you would still have views from those areas, kind of from the high points. But we looked beyond the interstate and did our analysis of the view of the Capitol from publicly accessible points. So we weren't really, concerned about views from people's buildings. But, if there are terminal views on streets, if there are parks or other open spaces that are public, can you see the Capitol from there? And that informed our maximum building heights. And what we ended up concluding is because of existing street patterns and development, the areas that exist or are planned that are going to be publicly accessible, there's not a view of the Capitol there now anyway. And so the building heights for this planning area, we're not impeding those.
Okay. Russell.
Thanks, Cliff. Thank you for the presentation, Bill. Curious, and I apologize if I missed it, but curious your thoughts and treatment of High Crossing Boulevard and whether the plan sees that as an important connection to the other side of the interstate. I mean, I think certainly the pedestrian experience, bicycling experience could be improved. It's really the only way to get over there. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, it is important. And yes, the bicycling experience can be improved. One of the recommendations was in the plan is also for a comprehensive study of East Washington Avenue. So you're probably aware of some of the fatalities that have happened. There's a lot that can be improved aesthetically, functionally, safety-wise. But I understand that there's going to be a bigger study in the future of, I don't know if it's of the entire East Washington Avenue, but it's more than the segment that is just in our planning area. And it's got to address some of those. High Crossing's not a side street, but it's got to address some of those that are part of that system right there. So okay. I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but yes, we are well aware that that's an important connection, and it's not, High Crossing is not the best right now.
Well, and to be frank, I don't really know what's over there that people would be going over High Crossing to go to necessarily, but I just think it's an opportunity. Maybe.
Well, it's going to become more important because we're showing that basically that's the street that would extend straight through where the mall is right now. So it will be kind of a parallel to East Washington Avenue at some point in the future. Even if it doesn't get extended all the way through now, just the extension, say, to Zaire, I think will necessitate the redesign and evaluating High Crossing.
Thank you.
Tom?
Thanks, Cliff. 2 questions. One was about bike connectivity, and I think I saw in one iteration of the plan a whole bike path picture, but I don't think it was in your deck tonight. At least I didn't see it. I'm particularly interested in how that correlates to the development of the Starkweather Creek Park Strip, because that is quite a great natural feature, and it also seems like an obvious pedestrian and bike corridor. So if that's available to just look at real quick. And then broadly, the CBL being the current owner of most of the mall itself, have they been contacted? Have they had any input, any reaction to this? Because they're a key player in the long term.
So to start with the bike one first, yes, there's a map in the plan. That I turned off my VPN, so my internet was more stable, so I can't pull it up right now. Sorry, but there are a number of paths that are proposed into the space. Right now, we don't have any proposed going parallel along. I guess we do on the south side of the creek, but there are a number of paths that are proposed into that greenway. So it's hard to talk about without the map. Sorry, but so yes, CBL has been involved in this plan, as they have been in the Odana plan. And I think we've heard a couple different things from them, but I would say their overriding comments had to do with the concern that we are, that this will send a message that the mall is going to be going out of business. And I think they have concerns that the message this plan will send will not help with them trying to attract tenants. And I think they acknowledge that retail is evolving, and they like most property owners, honestly, want to maintain maximum flexibility to be able to respond to those changes. But yeah, they have some concerns about how this plan will be perceived by potential future tenants.
I think I was particularly interested too about giving up parking, since they are so married, their whole model so married to the car, and yet so much of this redevelopment, even leaving the core of the shopping center there, encroaches on existing parking. Whether that's even, I guess, realistic was my real question. Until the mall goes away, can anything happen in those spaces?
Yeah, I would imagine that that's a concern of theirs. I haven't heard them specifically say that in this case, but in working with them in the past on other tenant improvements, I know that's always an issue. And, these, particularly the mall, is so entangled in cross-access easements because there are a number of property owners, like a lot of the anchors own their own properties. And so the ring roads around the mall are all tied up, and so all of that has to kind of be unraveled over time. And so, I think the infill on the mall parking lots is probably not going to happen in the very near future, but, probably a lot more opportunity in some of those outlying parcels.
All right. Shane, followed by Craig.
Thanks. And thanks, Bill.
So
Tom kind of stole my main comment, I think, looking at the green space and Starkweather Creek and trail connectivity. Admittedly, I don't know much about that segment of Starkweather, but it does seem like an incredible opportunity when you think about some of the medium residential that you're proposing, as well as just commercial, what we've all learned from the last couple of years, and like having that access to nature, whether it's where you're working or living, and being able to kind of like dip out after work or during your lunch hour and like have a walking trail would be a really cool piece of the plan. I do like, the phase 4 urban plaza, and the way that kind of comes down and connects to Starkweather to the south is a pretty interesting piece of the plan. And just in general, I think the kind of Sim City simulation that you've created is kind of fun to visualize. So yeah, I guess I would encourage that, like, the plan actually, depicts maybe some of those things around Starkweather, that it's not just about like connecting to it or connecting to the south, but it's also about like movement along it. It seems like just a great opportunity. And then my second point was just about the views, and I do seem to recall that you catch glimpses of the Capitol from the interstate along the edge of this, which I have always felt like was uniquely Madison. And I don't know how that dovetails with the sort of the height map. And I think it's a pretty like low view, and it's a brief view that is probably already impeded by some of the like low-rise buildings or even like trees along the edge of the interstate. But I've always found that to be kind of compelling. If you're passing along Madison, you catch that glimpse. And I would want to make sure that we're planning around that and considering that. Thanks. That's it for me.
Thank you. Craig?
Thanks, Cliff. Bill, thanks for presenting this. Lots of wonderful ideas that you put together, and I appreciate the detail you went into of walking through the various elements. I particularly enjoy your mission or vision of trying to define the place and what this experience is going to be when you come to this area. And going back to like one of your original comments of scale, I think we could look at some opportunities where place is a lot more plural than singular, of what this destination would mean. And two different things. One, you talk about these developments taking decades to transpire. And are we waiting for a capstone for that urban plaza, which might be the last thing to be there? So does the place wait for that to come? Or is there an opportunity, and I see it with, whether it's High Crossing Boulevard, to create a secondary, east-west or perpendicular approach where that place could start being built out in those areas. And then the mall could actually be the destination until you get that urban plaza built. So you're starting to create the momentum of where are we going and the connectivity. And then it could build upon, whether it's more like a cross or just more plurality to grab the whole area to make it all part of the experience. So I know you have a nice cross section there of High Crossing and what you could do. And I'm wondering if that could be a little bit more of like a mini urban plaza. You're bringing a little bit more green space into it. Make it more of a nice place for people to have like on-street dining, some other things as well too. I think that's maybe something to think about. That's all I had. Thanks for everything, Bill.
Thank you.
Cliff, you're muted.
Russell, you have one more follow-up question?
Oh, I can unmute myself. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you. The Urban Design District UDD guidelines number 5 has provisions for added earth berms to protect residential homeowners from the noise from the street. Does this plan have any considerations or about that specifically, Bill?
This plan does not, but since that urban design district was established, there are now state requirements about buffering noise from interstates, and I think it depends on the situation and the project and the type of use, but primarily for residential, there are berming or I think fencing. Fencing can also apply, but it also takes into account topography and where the residential is in relation to the elevation of the noise source. And so it's not specifically addressed in this plan, but it's a requirement that it be done, and it could be done in a number of different ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Bill, it seems like a real daunting task. Like you said, it's a huge area sprawled all over the place, but if you don't start somewhere, sometime, it'll never happen. So I really applaud the vision.
Thank you. We've been looking forward to this plan for a long time, this and Westtown, and it's been a different kind of project to work on, and there's so much potential. I think we're all pretty excited about it, and we just need to kind of get this framework in place and get at it.
Great. Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing the plan evolve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us up to item number 5, which is on 1954 East Washington Avenue. We saw an informational presentation on this project, I think, over the summer, and they're back for their final approval.
Evan Burrow will be presenting, and Lori Heineman from Madison Development Corporation is here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anytime you are ready, Kevin.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, we had presented this project to you over the summer, late summer, with regards to an informational presentation. This is the final addition to the Avenue property on East Washington Avenue, owned by Madison Development Corp. And we're looking to do 24 new apartment buildings on the northeast corner of the site, as you can see in the red box with the yellow shading. Go to the next slide. The context images again, just to get your bearings. This property is the original University Hospital, has been converted to apartments a number of years ago. We recently completed a new apartment building on the property a couple of years ago. And then the site that we're looking at right now is the current home or previous home of Options and Community Living, which is a 2-story office building that will be raised for this development. Go to the next slide. These are the finished photos of the Grass Camp building that recently completed, 44-unit apartment building, which has been very well received in the community here. So we're utilizing the design intent of this to carry on into the new building as well. So you go to the next slide. The overall site layout then, we have this 24-unit building in the northeast corner. Vehicular access is aligned with the extension of 2nd Street off of Mifflin to come into the underground parking. And then we have landscaping around the perimeter of that. The area to the west of that is still earmarked for the future home of the Grass Camp Park to be rebuilt sometime in the future. And then the brown buildings represent the existing housing that already exists on the property. Next slide. We have the landscaping plan here that was included in your packet. And I can answer questions on that as they come up. Next slide. So in general, the changes that we made for this development is regards to trying to have this have more of a residential feel to it, being a 2- to 3-story townhome type building located along Mifflin Street. So the aerial view here shows the context of this new building. You go to the next slide. What we've done is revised the entry sequence to the units
having a more residential feel to the entry porches, the front porches. Previously, the canopies were suspended by turnbuckles and cables, and we've added posts and a more linear awning or canopy element over that, and then revised the overall scale of the detailing to be more residential in feel. So here's a view looking at the corner of 2nd and Mifflin. If you go to the next slide. Here's another view looking head on, so you can kind of get a feel for these 2-story townhome elements that we're trying to create. And then the 3rd floor does step back as well. So you really do have more of a 2-story feel along the sidewalk as you're walking down the sidewalk. Next slide. Here's another view looking at the access to the underground. And again, you can see how that 3rd floor steps back. And we've got these 2-story elements up front along the sidewalk. Next slide. Here's another view looking down towards the back. We can go to the next slide, please. And then the rear elevations and renderings are shown here, where we do have the same character and detail on the backside, but this is where the handicap access is to the building. So we don't have steps into the porches, but we do have access into those back units and into the main entry of the building along the back as well. Next slide. And then here's a close-up view of that entry into the building, which then provides access to the rest of the campus here for this development. Next slide. Here's a close-up view of those front porches and the feel and character of those. And last slide, I believe. I'm sorry, here's a distant view. As you can see, Grasscamp Park in the foreground, and then the building back. And again, that 3rd floor is stepped back. And then final slide. For the exterior materials, we are matching the materials that we utilized on the Grasscamp building with the same brick and siding details, colors, and trim. So with that, I can open up to any questions you may have.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Questions or comments, commissioners? A motion, Christian?
I think this looks really nice. I'm a big fan of the grass camp building out on the front part of this project. I just thought that came together really well, and every time I drive by it, I just think it's a really nice looking building, and I think this on the opposite corner is going to be a nice complement to it. Just a couple questions. I was looking at the underground parking, and I had 2 questions. It looked like there was only one stall designated for handicapped, and I just wondered what the standards are for how many of those there should be. 1 out of 24 seems a little bit light to me, but maybe it's what's required. And the other question about the parking, and I realize that this isn't required or anything, but our former fellow commissioner Alder Abbas has asked, is there plans to at least have the underground parking stubbed in for electrical charging, or are there going to be some spaces that are built right off the bat with electrical charging?
Yes.
The questions are the handicapped and the electrical.
Okay, thank you. Those are good questions. With regards to the number of handicap stalls required, when you have straight housing within the building, you need to have 2% of your stalls be handicap accessible. So the 1 stall is sufficient per code. Clearly, if we have additional residents that need accommodations, we can try to accommodate them. And then with regards to the electrical vehicle charging, yes, we will be accommodating that as well within the building. It's actually part of the ordinances now for City of Madison, such that we have to have a certain minimum percentage of our stalls be electrical vehicle charging immediately, and then additional stalls ready to be adapted to do so. So that will be our intent, to follow the ordinance and provide those stalls as well.
Okay, and I had one other few small comments about the landscaping. I hate to keep flogging a leafy horse on this, but on the side of the driveway, there's a calorie pear, a Cleveland Select pear. We're really discouraging developers from using that tree anymore. It isn't banned in Wisconsin yet, but it probably will be eventually. It's just a troublesome plant for a lot of reasons that I won't go into. I've talked about it before, but that for a flowering small tree over there on the western edge next to the driveway, there's some, plenty of other alternatives. Another flowering crab to go along with the existing ones in the plan, or a red buckeye or a Japanese tree lilac. Any of those would be preferable to that Cleveland Select calorie pear. The other bugaboo for everybody on the commission that has plant background is the Stella de Road daylilies. It's just become a cliche plant. There's literally thousands of daylilies out there, but we keep saying project after project after project come before us with that selected as the plant. And it's a fine plant with a lot of attributes, but it's just way overused. There's lots of other ones out there. My biggest gripe with it is, the color of it, which is almost a perfect match for, safety yellow. So it's that color. It's the same color as you would find on curb markings and stuff. And it'd just really be nice to see some other selection to replace those along the sides of the front steps on the building. It's such a nice looking building. It deserves something a little bit nicer. Some of the trees going on that East Mifflin frontage, I fear, are going to grow almost too large for the space they're in, but it probably won't happen for a while. And honestly, I don't want to dissuade anybody from planting oaks. You're really planting for your kids and grandkids when you plant oaks. So I'm going to let that slide. But the daylilies and the calorie pear are the items I'd like to see revisited.
We'd be willing to revise those.
That's all I have.
You want to unmute yourself? I can unmute you. Either way.
Cliff, I think you're muted.
I'm not muted, am I?
Not anymore, but when you
Okay.
talked earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Lois, you had your hand raised.
I didn't know if you were talking to me or not.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Skipped
Well, I was
out.
going to make a motion for final approval.
Okay. Is there a second? That's Craig, and Tom's nodding in approval. Okay. So I'm going to put the hands down. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion on the motion. Kevin.
Oh, just a question about Christian's landscape comments, if that was going to be part of the recommendation or not.
Yes. Thank you for
sorry about
the
that.
reminder.
Sorry, Christian. Yeah.
So
no pear trees.
Those doggone calorie pears. I'm sick of them. Sick of them, I tell you. And don't get me started on the daylilies.
And the daylilies. Thank you.
Okay. So seeing no additional hands raised, questions or comments, then by unanimous consent, You have your final approval with the landscape comments and conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to our next presentation, which is on Mineral Point Road, and it's an informational presentation.
Our development team is Brad Koenig and Steve Doran.
All right, good evening. My name is Brad Koenig with Sketchworks Architecture, and on behalf of Steve Doran, as the building owner, we'd like to present this exterior alteration to the multi-tenant commercial building, along with minor site improvements to the Oak Ridge Commons Retail Center. Oak Ridge Commons is located just to the east of Highway 14 along Mineral Point Road, kind of highlighted here in the development. It was originally a 3-phased development, starting from the west and then working its way for the 3rd phase, which would be the Walgreens, which is currently not part of this this redesign. However, we did just learn today that they would be interested in a further conversation about revamping their storefront as well as part of this. So that will be, I guess, the follow-up to this conversation. Next slide, please. So a few photos of the existing building. The original phase on the west side was built in 1989, and then subsequent phases with ending in the Walgreens in 1994. So again, this retail center has kind of seen its life and is becoming a little bit tired. Tenants are starting to comment about just its longevity as a retail center and its visibility, for lack of a better term, kind of the small signage band areas that are available. Not much of a presence as far as a storefront goes. And so in an effort to kind of revamp this, we've looked at some options. The existing building also has this kind of 10-foot overhang colonnade in front of all the storefronts that makes, as you can see from this picture, even though it's south facing, kind of a dark storefront, low visibility, again with the narrow sign bands. Next slide, please. Again, here in this retail complex is very linear in nature. There's no real vertical elements besides the brick firewalls that exist as part of the kind of the architectural, and the only kind of vertical architectural element would be the tower, which was created during phase 2 as kind of the main entry point as you enter the site. Next slide, please. And then here's the end cap unit where obviously Men's Warehouse is. You kind of see the existing roof structure. It's a wood trussed roof structure at the front and at the back. Asphalt shingles, stucco signage band, and then as you can see here, the arched openings for the kind of the covered walkway and sidewalk in front of kind of all the storefronts. Next slide, please. If we go back to the site plan, there we go. So the site plan, just to kind of show the extent of what we're looking at as part of this proposal, would be exterior, facade changes, and with that removal of the canopy in front of the storefronts, we would be looking at replacing the sidewalk in those areas or along that area, create a new, fresh pedestrian experience. There are some large planters that would be removed, but then replaced with large movable kind of planters, a little bit more modern, something that's flexible that could be swapped out over time. And also flexible as far as locations, as tenants kind of come and go during the process. Obviously with COVID that we've just had or going through, outdoor space is a premium. So any kind of restaurant or outdoor eating space, outdoor, seating space for any tenant. There's a large sidewalk here, which could be utilized for that purpose, to activate both, the storefront and retail activities, bring better visibility, that sort of thing. So that the red there is the extent of the sidewalk renovation or replacement that would be part of this proposal. Next slide. So what we're proposing to do, like I said, is remove that heavy canopy as part of the roof structure, cut back the roof structure to create a larger vertical signage area, and then really try to activate the retail by replacing all the windows are mostly single pane at this point. We'd be replacing the aluminum storefront with better low E quality glazing. And then obviously with removing the overhang creates greater visibility to these retail tenants, gives them larger signage opportunities. And then what we did in order to try to break up the linear nature of the overall building, we created kind of a rhythm of tower elements that really gave some prominence to certain tenants along the way. It also relates back to the tower element, the original tower element there in the center. But instead of kind of a prairie style look with the roof, we'd swap that out and do a standing seam flat roof. All the other asphalt shingles would be replaced with standing seam metal panel to create kind of a modern interpretation of what this building was. And then we have some brick piered accents, again, to kind of create some vertical elements to the building. And then kind of bring back that element of a little bit of shade protection and a little bit of rain and sun protection would be an aluminum awning that would then go up above the storefront windows to kind of create more depth and interest there, pedestrian feel. Really try to activate the building itself. Next slide. You have view from the west again here at the men's warehouse, kind of pushing that up as a total element to kind of turn the corner as one of the entrances to the site. And there you can see there's a kind of a rhythm there of tower elements in conjunction with the original entry tower element. Next slide. This takes a look. Kevin had a comment early on when we kind of talked with him and Jenny Kirchgetter about how the men's warehouse might turn the corner. This is one idea that we've come up with is really taking these brick accents and turning the corner with the flat roof that we're creating, and then turning the corner with the siding that's on the building, and kind of addressing it in this nature. We still have the angular triangular roof structure and the firewalls to deal with, but what we're trying to do there is really mask that as much as possible by staining the brick kind of a whitewashed gray. And we're working with both Sherwin-Williams and Holman Lindsay to kind of create some options there about staining the brick versus painting. We'd rather not paint the brick and create the maintenance issues that would cause in the longevity. So that's the way we're trying to treat that existing orange masonry, at least at the front of the building. Next slide, please. Again, just a shot at the center there of what we're looking to accomplish. Again, variation. The building steps back about 10 feet every so often, so a lot of variation in the building, and try to accentuate that with those tower elements. Next slide, please. Overall, this shows the Walgreens as it exists now. And again, like I said, when we submitted this, we didn't have Walgreens buy-in as far as their renovation, but they've now come back as early as today to say that they'd like to be kind of part of this and be considered. And so we would be looking at something that's complementary to what we're doing. They have a new corporate design. So we'd be kind of taking those elements, which are very similar to what we're presenting on the renovation, and incorporating that into the Walgreens, more glass for them at their front door. And again, get rid of kind of the gable elements and the and just clean up and modify that end cap as well. Next slide. Materials. Again, we're looking at as we push back cut off the existing trusses. We're looking at kind of a siding, lap siding material on the storefront. Mainly, it's going to be new storefront on the lower level. We've got some brick pier accents. We've got then the aluminum canopies that are above that with some stucco signage bands, and then capping that off with a metal panel kind of soffit and trim, and then the standing seam, a dark standing seam metal roof in lieu of the asphalt shingles that exist. And again, the stained brick that we're working on, trying to find a great solution for that blends in well with the kind of the color scheme and tones that we think the retailers will enjoy. I think that's probably it for the slide. The last slide is just kind of a blow or an overall of the signage area. There was some discussion early on about just kind of what the additional signage area would be. So this is just a diagram showing the amount of square footage that would be allowable based on the zoning code. So I look forward to any comments or questions that you might have.
Okay. I did see in the original list of registrants, Steve Doran registering, wishing to speak. Is Steve present?
I don't believe he is. I think he had a conflict last minute, so I don't believe he's available.
Yeah, we don't have a Steve with us.
Yep.
Okay. All right, then we'll move right into our commissioners' discussion. Lois.
Thank you. Question, this building has the backside to it, correct? I mean, it's another...
It does, yes. It has access for tenants in the back, correct? But it's not part of the retail portion. It's the back door to all the tenants.
Is any of that being renovated, or is that?
It is not. Our focus was mainly on the storefront section.
Okay. And then at the Men's Warehouse corner, if you go back to the image where you saw the gray brick kind of poking up there, was there any thought to maybe making another tall element at that, kind of another anchor to add some more verticality and interest to that, so you don't have that weird little fin coming up? I mean, that might be an option for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly tall piece. I mean, I think already the Men's Warehouse is up along with the other towers at about 24 feet, I believe. And that ceiling or that roof shape is another 10 or 15 foot taller than that. And then we had to kind of consider the kind of the roof rainwater coming off that roof. And how we kind of treat that. So yes, it's in consideration, I guess. And we're looking for better ways to kind of address that. Unfortunately, well, it's the end unit. So another option, it's not really an option to take off the roof at that point. We're trying to not disturb the tenant space on the interior. But there may be a better way that we can kind of eliminate that or cover that up in a better way.
Okay. Yeah. And then I guess my final comment is it's very stark looking, the grays and white and black. And you're staining the brick gray. I'm wondering if there was any consideration to a palette that would incorporate the existing color brick to modernize the appearance, but maybe keep that the brick original color.
It's a question you're looking at for an answer for, or is that a suggestion?
Yeah, I was wondering if there was any consideration to keeping the existing brick without altering it.
Yeah, there definitely was consideration to leave the brick the way it is and use a palette that was more suitable. I think what we were trying to accomplish and what the owner was trying to accomplish was kind of a stark difference to what was there, and really, in our opinions, try to modernize the space and the feel, and really try to take a departure from that.
Yeah, and maybe it's just all of the signage right now is black print, and maybe once the imagery is, like Walgreens, their own signage might liven that up a bit.
Yeah, there definitely will be, a lot of the signage that's there now, even if you want to flip back to the original existing photos, a lot of it's very, very colorful and so there will definitely be some color to that building and based on the signage.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Cliff. To follow up on Lois's point, because the backside, and I'm zooming around here a little Google Maps as well. Even from the backside, you can see that centralized feature. So, going back to the original brick color and the challenge of not having that blend in with the renovations of the front palette, I think there's an inherent challenge of where do you stop, and then does it look like really like the old and the new, especially when you come around the back side with Point Place and that street view along there. So that's why, kind of building upon Lois's comment, I think when you come around there, and even on the Walgreens side too, both places, it's very prominent, the northern elevation. And I know it's back a house, but it's still making that transition to the point that it looks like a singular design still. Mm-hmm. So I think some thought into that, as well as on the backside street views of seeing that prominent tower on the backside. Again, you're going to see these colors that if they don't work well together, it's really going to look a little like a patchwork of a building.
Okay.
I know it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, definitely we can take a look at that and give that some strong consideration. I don't disagree with you. It has been a challenge to try to change the look as much as we can. But consideration of that existing brick, it's such a strong element in the existing building.
And putting money into the backside of the building, I totally understand the challenge of that. It's we want to put it where it pops. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I know that the building is old, 30 years old, and with that big huge roof with the lights on, everything is very dated. But I'm asking myself, is this really an improvement? And I think it has a ways to go. Certainly with the color that was mentioned before, and competing with areas that you're not going to touch, makes it look even more superficial. I just don't know that main tower, just by putting a flat roof on it when you have a lot of pitched roof forms, is an improvement at all. I think that the corner piers over there by Men's Warehouse, those corner piers at that main tall tower, they just go up and they sort of stop when I'm looking for them to kind of go up to the black roof and then come across over top to really create a sign area, and because I think there's way too much ephes here. And I also think that while the colonnade has some challenges for the retailers, it does shade the building effectively. And I think that the canopies that you're showing are in comparison very flimsy. I think the starkness and the starkness in the white and the whitewashing and everything just kind of adds to that kind of stark feeling. But so I really think those taller elements, those tower elements, could have brick going up and then not a curve arch, but just a kind of a flat arch going over them, and staying a little bit more true to the brick masonry look of the building around the other sides. and then reducing all that ephes and coming up with a much more substantial and effective canopy system that would provide shading on the building. Tom.
Thanks, Cliff. I had a technical question, and that is, I know we have I don't know, ordinance about painting brick, but does the ordinance make a distinction between staining and painting, or are we up against sort of the same limitation there in terms of? I mean, I would just ask maybe Kevin if that.
I don't know that is there an ordinance, and this is not an urban design district. This is a.
Is that where that language is?
A large retail development in excess of 40,000 square feet or something. But Kevin, I don't know that there is an ordinance prohibiting.
No, there isn't. I don't believe any of the urban design districts have that as a requirement. There are some design guidelines. Some of the districts include guidelines, so there's suggestive language there and a few other places. But as far as this one, there isn't a zoning regulation that would prohibit staining. Okay, so it's been the practice of the commission that going back a few years now, that staining was generally something that could potentially even be approved at a staff level, but painting of brick was usually something that comes back to the commission.
So you do distinguish. Okay. Well, I guess I would broadly I looked at this and my first question was, is this an improvement? It didn't strike me that way, quite frankly. And I would just point out that a sister building to this on University Avenue, University Station, has also recently undergone a major renovation. It has got exactly the same architecture, same roof, the whole. I mean, they were built exactly at the same time by John Fled. And I find their approach to renovation more successful, and they kept the brick color. They just took a very different, they didn't go for stark modern. They have a little more traditional. They added stone and a few other materials. And at first I cringed and thought this wasn't going to come out right. But if you drive by it, I think it actually came out pretty nicely. So I would just suggest that as another approach to this renovating a dated building, and particularly one that would keep the original brick color in some form. Because I'm very concerned about the idea that you're going to have front to back two different buildings, and it's going to look messy.
Yep. Embrace what you got.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? This is informational, so I'm certain they want to hear it all now and instead of when they're here for a formal presentation. No. Okay, going once. Russell.
I know this is a facade improvement for the most part, but I was curious whether there might be some opportunities to add some greenery to this site. Might be outside of the scope of your project, but does seem to be going with some of the comments about starkness. I think some living things could create a nice balance to maybe what you might be trying to achieve. So just a comment, and thanks for the presentation.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian, and then Shane. Shall I unmute you?
I gotta
Christian?
think.
Okay.
I got to think that this was, done pre-current standards, just by the looks of how many parking spaces there are, unbroken without islands and stuff. And so, yeah, I realize this is a project about the facade of the building and stuff, but to Russell's point, I think you'd be missing an opportunity to possibly make some changes in landscaping. Would go a long way towards softening the starkness of the current design that you have. And kudos for putting the planters out there and stuff, but I've seen those go up in front of lots of new developments and stuff, and it's nice to put them there, but then you got to make sure somebody's, doing some nice stuff with them, like you see at, Hilldale, for instance, or Greenway Commons does a nice job with it. But that parking lot in front is, very barren and not a good viewpoint to look at this building, either in its current or potential future look as it is. So just something to think about.
Thank you. Shane.
Thanks. Just very briefly, I did want to comment on the earlier comment about the awnings and the colonnade as it exists today. And I think the one thing that we unfortunately see a lot of in new developments is like this flatness of the facade and the materiality. And that's kind of one thing the current building does have going for it, is it has like some depth and shadow lines with that. So I'll just throw that out there for what it's worth. I don't think it doesn't make it an exceptional series of buildings, but it does help when you have that kind of depth to the facade. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other comments for informational presentation purposes? No? Okay, then thank you very much. And that concludes our agenda for this afternoon, with the exception of Secretary's report and business by members.
And just for Secretary's report, I just wanted to note that we've been contacted by the mayor's office, and many of you will likely recall earlier this summer there was a question of whether or not the commission wanted to return to a in-person format. There's another request to ask boards, committees, and commissions their preference for 2021, and would like to add that to an upcoming agenda. So that's the only other update I'd have, and we'll look to add that on the December 1st agenda.
And would it be appropriate to forward that memo to the commission then?
Yes, there is a memo that came out to the mayor's office, forward to the chair, but I believe I can forward that to the body as a communication.
That'll just be a reminder when you get your next packet that, start thinking about whether you want to meet in person or, keep it the way it is. They definitely want us to pick one and say so. Okay. All right. Any other business by members? No. Okay. Good having you back, Julie. Certainly struggled last time. I think you were in jury duty or something.
You, Cliff. Yes, and I was Madam Foreperson. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's good to be back in my regular role.
Yes. And Jesse and Stefan, thank you, especially for helping our one registrant find a way to participate this afternoon. Okay, so we've got 2 more meetings this year in 2-week successions. Hopefully we'll have good attendance and a nice light agenda. It's 6:34, and by unanimous consent, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.